Welcome to another episode of the Beauty and Ruin podcast. This is David Starr, and today we're talking to my co-writer, good friend, and colleague, Shelley Rae Korntved, all the way from Wisconsin. How are you doing, Shelley?
I'm doing well. Thank you, David.
All right. So you're getting some rain, I hear.
Yeah, a bit. We're not quite accustomed to the lakes in the yard or the grass growing so quickly, but it's lovely. It's green. I've got a garden started, cucumbers and sweet corn is coming up, peppers and carrots. It's pretty neat. It's pretty neat to watch stuff grow.
Good. Well, we all miss you here in Cedar Edge, but I know that while the timing was a little odd for how your move turned out, the world turned upside down at about the same time. You're getting to see your family a lot, and that was the whole point. So we miss you, but we're happy for you. And I hope the rain lets up a little and things begin to grow at a normal pace soon.
Yes. So. Well, we miss you too. I mean, deeply. We have. I mean, Cedar Edges are the family we chose. You know, friends of the family you choose, and that is exactly how we feel about all of you out there. So I hope you're staying safe.
Yeah, we're staying safe, and town's rocking along pretty good. So I'll be out there to see you next spring to play. So we'll get all caught up in person then. But today I wanted to talk about just tell folks a little bit about the way you came into this project, and as most folks know, I gave old copies of my granddad's book of What Was, Nothing Is Left to some folks in Nashville with the idea that they would all help me write songs for the project, including John Oates and Dana Cooper and Irene Kelly, Doug and Talisha Williams and Wood Newton. And along the way, I noticed that the copy I'd given you was chock full of little Post-it notes, and I'd been gone a lot, and I didn't realize you were sort of working on some poetry out of the book. So that's how we ended up writing a song together for this thing. So tell me about your impressions of the book and why you were drawn to it as a creative person.
Well, first of all, it was a challenge for me to write something that was not purely autobiographical,
right? Where
I'm stepping into a book, and that was a beautiful challenge, if you would. And as I read the book, I was really struck by the lengths a person would go to have a child, and then the impact of that act on so many people.
Right.
I mean, I was kind of floored by that. And then, you know, in the beginning of the book, I felt such deep sympathy for Laura because the women of Laurel Creek talked about her behind her back and said she was uppity and she was not from there, and not having a companionship of women folk, a husband that's gone all the time, and not being able to have a child. She was at the beginning of the tragedy, which is obvious in this book. But I was compelled to write about Jody because my heart broke for him.
Right.
You know, he didn't, the name of the song, you know, he didn't fall through the cracks. He lived in them and was kind of suffocating in his parents' poor decisions and the community's cruel actions.
Right.
So it started with a found poem, and because that's how I was able to write a song, and then it fell into song form, and then it was a 3-count waltz, and I turned it over to you, and you made it really special.
Well,
with everything that you've added.
Well, yeah, it was special to start with, but what's been interesting on this project is the way everybody approached it a little bit differently. And what's interesting about your approach, in addition to it being a poem first, was Jody. The term "cracks of time" actually referred to Cindy in the book, because she was sort of the caretaker for everybody when things began to spin out of control and their health failed, and she was sort of the nurse and well, I guess she was actually a nurse by trade, and she looked after everybody. And in the book, it said Cindy lived in little cracks of time. So
Yeah.
you sort of took that line, which is powerful and sort of evocative, and how you can attach a real feeling to that. Anybody that's ever had to sort of look after other people and look after themselves second or third can empathize with that, and then attach that to Jodi's life. And on my next episode that I do a live stream on, I'm gonna talk about all this. But yeah, Jodi seemed to be such a tragic character in this book, and it's interesting because he doesn't seem like he ever really stood a chance.
No, he didn't. But there is. I've revisited the book a bit, and I will continue to reread it because I like to reread books because they're like old friends. And your grandfather had such a great way of writing. I mean, he just pulls you right in to this story. And as much as you're angry with the characters, you still have deep love and empathy for them, And it was interesting because now I in revisiting, it's like, oh, well, I really want to write a song about the captain, and I want to write a song about Frank and his love for Cindy, but his odd love for Laura, and all these things, because she was like, Laura was almost she was transferring her need for a child when she first married the captain in tucking in Frank, this almost grown boy. It was just, there's so much. I mean, there's so much song fodder in this short, tragic tale that it's a beautiful lesson in humanity, and I love it. I will forever read this book.
Well, yeah, and I feel like, in a way, now that I'm like you, I go back and reread part of it as an exercise while I'm working on these live streams to search out kind of where inspiration may have come from for a certain song or whatever. But I've been reading like whole chapters, and I'm almost thinking we've got more songs to write. It's like we're not done yet. What
I
was
feel
it?
the same way.
Yeah. One of the things that's come up in these live streams, and our friend Renee here in town brought this up, that perhaps I was a little too tough on Laura in my commentary about her motivations and the way she sort of brought the house down, if you will. Do you see her as bad, good, or kind of neither in all this?
I see her as a woman that was kind of scorned by the other women in the town that she moves to. And her husband, he was so used to being out on the road, he was gone all the time. So she had this deep-seated loneliness. And when they couldn't have a child, she was just searching for, I feel, a sense of self, a sense of purpose, and a place, because she was literally alone in that big old house, And then after she had Jodi, she refused to go out and be around anybody because she had been so. I think, yes, what she did was wrong, but she was desperate, and people do they don't use their best decision making tools when they're desperate or lonely, and I think she was tragically lonely. And that's how I feel about Laura. And then I reread, and that's what I got. The first time I was mad at her. Like, How could you do this to your child? How could you do this to the captain? He's this honorable man. And then, you start thinking about it, and you think about the human condition, and we're not meant to be alone. We really aren't. And we're wired to have offspring.
Well, that was
better otherwise.
Yeah, that was one of the things I was going to say, is that there's a line in Of What Was, Nothing Is Left, the song. I guess I shouldn't blame you for the part that you felt you had to play. And in that line, what I meant when I wrote that was that there's some things that are sort of out of our control in terms of the nature's urge to procreate and to build community around ourselves when there is none. And you're right. She came to a community hoping to be accepted, and she did everything to try and be accepted, and yet people can be cruel, and groups of women can often be very cruel and
Right.
sort of cliquish, and that's not fair. And so they maybe she felt pushed into a situation where she had to act out that way. And there's so much in the book that I haven't really written about yet. And I spoke to this issue the other day when I was doing my live stream, was that there's the whole part of the book that's about Frank and the murder trial and all that stuff. None of us even touched on that and I thought about that, and I'm wondering if maybe all of us were more drawn to the human interest part of these characters. They're the character of the characters, if you will. Does that make sense?
Absolutely makes sense, because Frank is truly the main character.
Right.
He's the one telling the story, and we all kind of neglected him. And he's the one that he was so fiercely loyal to the captain, but then angry with him because he didn't stand up to Laura, and he loved Laura, and he got sentenced for avenging her and he just took it. He just took it. He's an interesting character, and I think my next reread, I think I would focus on Frank. Definitely, I would focus on Frank.
Yeah, I mean, he was kind of the hero in a way, because he tried to stand up for all sides involved, and as angry as he was at Jody for his behavior and that sort of thing, he didn't want to see anything happen to him, and he even talks about him being one of the people that he loved who was gone, towards the end of the book. So it's
right.
interesting.
Well,
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I was just thinking about when they went and got Jody from the circus, and he wouldn't even look at the captain, but ended up sobbing in Frank's arms. Frank is so much to so many people. And I think that's an interesting angle. How do you be that hero to this whole tragic group of people that you love?
Yeah.
Talk about dysfunction.
Yeah, and I don't know, it's so interesting. Someone commented the other day online to me about knowing my grandparents, and how there was a sadness about them because they had lost a couple of children early on in their lives, and again, it always makes me. I just wish I could go back and ask my grandfather, okay, did this really happen? Did this really happen? Was this you? Was this somebody you knew? What
Mm-hmm.
what of this is true? And I'm inclined to believe almost all of it is in some way, because it's all kind of believable,
Right.
based on the way people act to each other.
Yes. It's definitely a teaching story in how maybe not to behave and how important communication is.
Right. Well, I think I'm gonna dig into this later on this year, and challenge myself to maybe write a couple of more songs out of it, and I'd love for you to think about doing the same, because I feel like, kind of like at the end of the book, where Frank and Cindy seem to have opportunity ahead of them because of all the tragedies behind. I feel like everybody involved in this thing we're not done. I feel like there's just more to say, because it's such a deep, rich book. And you're right, it's not a long book. It's pretty short and pretty to the point. But man, every time I go in there, there's more information.
Yes, exactly. I'm always pulled in a different direction, and maybe we write about the heroes, or the hero, but Cindy was a hero as well. So, I think there's a great deal of potential, as I said, song fodder.
Yeah.
Or poem fodder.
Yeah.
I'll probably start with poems.
Well, no, that's a neat way to do it, and I'm glad we finally connected on that. And I loved what you did, and I liked the song that you wrote, the sort of waltz that you wrote, and I took it and tried to make it fit a little more where I was going with the rest of the record. And it's interesting, because I consider that one of those happy sort of magic things that's happened along the way in recording these songs is that stuff you didn't count on happens, and one of them is us being able to put that together. The other is the way it sounds when it got recorded. It almost, there's no full drum kit on it. There's Greg Morrill played a djembe or a tabla drum or something and a little kick drum, and then there was all this sort of spacey stuff. And I remember John Oates turning around as we were listening to it, and he said, "Is this Led Zeppelin 3 or 4?" Because it had such an odd, almost Middle Eastern feel to it in a way. The sort of spaciness and looseness of it.
This is Cracks of Time.
I don't know. I love playing it. It's one of my very favorite songs to play, and I think of you dearly every single time I perform it. So I couldn't be more grateful.
Oh, David.
And it's in Dadgad, which is my favorite new tuning because I don't know, it's just fun to play in.
I've been working that one too. I've got a couple of different things going on in Dadgad because you've given me that.
Yeah.
Which is really neat. But I'm doing it in a 3 count because that's my preferred.
Hey, if that's your jam, that's your jam. Well, I want to thank you. I want to thank you for visiting with me this morning on this, and I also want to tell you that the guitar store misses you, and the town of Cedar Edge misses you, and people ask about you on a daily basis, and I just tell them you're paddling as fast as you can up over there near Green Bay, so in the deep water. So
right. Well, you are deeply missed and loved.
Well,
from out here.
I'll see you in the spring of next year. In the meantime, we're gonna pull this song up and close out this episode with the song. So thank you, Shelley Rae, and we will talk soon.
Sounds like a plan. You take care of yourself, David. Love to Cindy, too, and the rest of that lovely little town.
I'll let them know. Did not ask to be dealt this hand, but their lies spell firmly on your shoulders, burden undeserved by an innocent man, left hesitant and lonely in a world so cold. Now you are living in these cracks of time. Day runs into night, and heartache blurs the line between what's right and what's wrong, who's left and who's gone, living in these cracks of time. Broken on the wheel of circumstance, you set your own soul free. Who loved you, brought you to this dance, could not stop that soundless second like it was meant to be. Now you're living in these cracks of time, but day runs into night, and heartache blurs the line between what's right and what's wrong, who's left and who's gone, living in these cracks of time. No angels marching hand in hand, no mandolins to play you home. You've outrun your last mistake. Those left behind must carry on. Your song.
There's a line between what's right and what's wrong, who's left and who's gone, where every breath you take is a scene of the crime, living in these cracks of time, living in these cracks of time, living in these cracks of time.